In the merciless Texas wilderness of 1840, a band of young Texas Rangers awakened to a humiliating dawn. Their horses stolen by Comanche raiders under the cover of night, their pride shattered. Leading them is a rookie commander, Bigfoot Wallace, and a bloodthirsty stranger named Jeff Turner, whose belt dangles with scalps and whose eyes burn with vengeance. "I will track these Indians until I get a scalp or two," Turner vows, his words dripping with chilling resolve. As they charge into a brutal clash with the lords of the Southern Plains, one question looms: can vengeance heal a broken man, or will it consume him in the fires of frontier violence? In the year 1840, South Texas stands as a crucible of conflict, a rugged frontier where three worlds collide with unrelenting force. Anglo-Texan settlers, driven by dreams of land and prosperity, carve out fragile homesteads alongside Mexican communities, whose roots in the region stretch back centuries. Yet, both groups live under the shadow of the Comanche, a people whose dominance over the Southern Plains is absolute. This is no mere territory. It is a battleground where survival demands vigilance, and the stakes are life itself. The Comanche reign supreme, their authority forged in over a century of brutal warfare. By 1840, they control a vast empire, spanning from present-day Kansas to the heart of Texas, an area encompassing roughly 240,000 square miles. Their power stems not from numbers estimates, suggest their population never exceeded 20,000, but from an unmatched mastery of the horse. Historian T.R. Fehrenbach, in his seminal work Comanches, The History of a People, notes that the Comanche transformed the horse into an extension of their will, creating a culture of mobility and violence that no rival could match. Their raids strike with surgical precision, leaving settlements in ruins and survivors gripped by terror. These raids are not mere banditry. They are a calculated response to encroachment. In the decade leading up to 1840, Comanche attacks claimed the lives of at least 1,000 settlers, Mexican and Anglo alike, often with methods designed to instill dread. Women and children are not spared, their fates recounted in hushed tones across Texas. One contemporary account from 1838 describes a raid near San Antonio, where 12 settlers were killed, their bodies mutilated to send a message. The Comanche's brutality, while horrifying to settlers, is a tactic of deterrence, a warning to those who dare claim their lands. To counter this threat, the Texas Rangers emerge as the fledgling Republic of Texas's first line of defense. Formed in 1835, the Rangers are a ragtag force, often no more than 150 strong at any given time. Most are young men in their late teens or early 20s, fueled by ambition and a thirst for glory, yet their inexperience is glaring. Historian Walter Prescott Webb, in the Texas Rangers, A Century of Frontier Defense, describes them as brash, reckless, and often ill-disciplined, more suited to barroom brawls than the sophisticated warfare of the Comanche. In 1840, they are a symbol of Texas's defiance, but their effectiveness remains unproven. The Comanche story begins far from Texas, in the windswept Rockies of the Northern Plains. Centuries ago, they were a humble offshoot of the Shoshone, a tribe of hunter-gatherers scraping out a living in what is now Wyoming. Harassed by stronger neighbors like the Blackfeet and Crow, they endured as perennial underdogs. By 1600, their population likely numbered fewer than 5,000, confined to a harsh existence with little influence. Their fortunes shifted dramatically with the arrival of a single innovation that would redefine their destiny: the horse. Horses, brought to the New World by Spanish conquistadors in the 16th century, were initially a closely guarded asset. The Spanish, recognizing their value in warfare and transport, forbade natives from owning them. But this monopoly crumbled in 1680 during the Pueblo Revolt, a rebellion led by the Puebloan peoples of New Mexico. The uprising, orchestrated by a leader named Pope, saw 400 Spanish settlers killed and the colonial governor beheaded. More critically, it unleashed an estimated 2,000 horses onto the plains, a windfall that reshaped the region's power dynamics. While tribes like the Apache, Navajo, and UTEs adopted the horse for hunting and travel, the Comanche forged a bond that was revolutionary. By 1700, they had mastered not only riding but also selective breeding, producing steeds renowned for speed and endurance. A single Comanche warrior could manage a string of 10 to 15 horses, switching mounts to maintain relentless pursuit. Fehrenbach estimates that by 1750, the Comanche possessed over 100,000 horses, a staggering figure that underpinned their dominance. This equine revolution turned them from victims into predators, a force that swept across the plains with devastating effect. The Comanche's rise culminated in their conquest of Texas's richest hunting grounds, a region teeming with millions of buffalo. In the early 18th century, these lands belonged to the Apache, who numbered perhaps 15,000 and held sway over central Texas. But the Comanche, through decades of ruthless raids, systematically dismantled their rivals. By 1800, the Apache were pushed south and west, their population reduced to fewer than 5,000. The Comanche's campaign, as described by historian Pekka Hämäläinen in the Comanche Empire, was not mere warfare, but a deliberate strategy of displacement, securing control over an area that provided 80% of the region's buffalo. By 1840, the Comanche's grip on the southern plains is unchallenged, a testament to their adaptability and ferocity. They view the buffalo as the lifeblood of their culture, supplying food, clothing, and shelter. A single buffalo hunt could yield 500 pounds of meat, enough to sustain a family for months. The settlers' intrusion, Anglo-Texans and Mexicans alike, threatens this delicate balance. Ranchers and farmers, numbering over 30,000 in Texas by 1840, encroach on grazing lands, sparking Comanche retaliation. Hämäläinen notes that the Comanche saw these newcomers as interlopers who disrupted their economic and spiritual world. To the settlers, the Comanche are savages, their raids proof of an irredeemable barbarism. Anglo-Texan newspapers of the era, such as the Telegraph and Texas Register, publish lurid accounts of Comanche atrocities, fueling calls for extermination. Yet, this perspective ignores the Comanche's own logic. From their vantage point, the settlers are invaders, plundering a homeland won through generations of sacrifice. This clash of worldviews, settlers seeking dominion, Comanche defending their way of life, sets the stage for a conflict of unrelenting violence, where neither side offers quarter nor expects it. A dozen Texas Rangers, weary from a long day of patrolling the South Texas frontier in 1840, set up camp near the Zumwalt settlement. The small cluster of cabins, home to perhaps 50 Anglo-Texan settlers, lies just a few miles away, close enough to lull the Rangers into a false sense of security. These young men, most barely out of their teens, have spent hours scouring the plains for signs of Comanche raiders. Exhausted, they decide the proximity to the settlement shields them from danger. Their decision to rest here, under the vast Texas sky, reflects the brash confidence of youth, a belief that no enemy would dare strike so near a stronghold of civilization. Yet, in a moment of reckless folly, the Rangers commit a cardinal sin of frontier life. They fail to tether their horses. Standard protocol on the Texas plains demands that horses be staked or hobbled, especially in Comanche territory, where raids are as common as the wind. Historian Walter Prescott Webb, in the Texas Rangers, A Century of Frontier Defense, estimates that over 70% of ranger losses in the 1830s stemmed from stolen mounts, a vulnerability the Comanche exploited with ruthless precision. The Rangers' oversight is not mere carelessness. It is a display of arrogance, a belief that their presence alone deters the elusive warriors who rule the plains. As they settle down to a hearty meal and a night of rest, their untethered horses graze freely, unaware of the eyes watching from the shadows. Dawn breaks with a cruel revelation. The Rangers awaken to find their camp eerily silent. their 12 horses vital for mobility and survival gone. The Comanche raiders, moving with the stealth of specters, have struck in the night, leaving no trace but the empty patches of grass where the animals once stood. The precision of the theft is staggering. Not a single shot was fired, not a single ranger stirred. This silent strike, as historian T.R. Fehrenbach notes in Comanches, the history of a people, exemplifies the Comanches' mastery of guerrilla tactics, with raids often executed by small bands of 10 to 20 warriors. The Rangers, now stranded miles from aid, stand humiliated, their pride as battered as their prospects. With no choice, the Rangers sling their heavy saddles over their shoulders and begin the grueling trek to the Zumwalt settlement. Each man carries a saddle weighing up to 30 pounds, a physical burden matched by the weight of their disgrace. The settlement's residents, numbering fewer than 100, including women and children, greet them with a mix of pity and scorn. In a community where survival hinges on vigilance, the Rangers' blunder is a public spectacle. A 18th century Texas settler's journal, cited by historian Pekka Hämäläinen, describes similar incidents as a lesson in humility, noting that such failures often fueled settler resentment toward the Rangers' perceived incompetence. For these young men, the march is a crucible, forging their shame into a burning resolve for vengeance. The theft reveals a chilling truth. The Comanche were close enough to steal their horses, mere yards from the sleeping Rangers. This proximity underscores the raiders' audacity and skill, for they could have just as easily slit throats instead of cutting ropes. Fehrenbach estimates that Comanche raids in the 1840s resulted in over 500 settler deaths annually, many in nighttime ambushes where victims never saw their attackers. The realization dawns on the Rangers that their lives were spared, not out of mercy but as a calculated taunt, a message that the Comanche hold the upper hand. This thought festers, gnawing at their courage as they confront their own vulnerability. The Rangers' unease is compounded by the tales of Comanche cruelty that echo through Texas. Stories of torture, mutilation, and slaughter are common currency in settlements like Zumwalt. One documented raid in 1839 near Goliad, recorded in the Texas Sentinel, describes a family of 6 scalped and dismembered, their bodies left as a warning. Such accounts, often exaggerated but rooted in truth, paint the Comanche as demons of the plains. For the Rangers, averaging 20 years old and with fewer than 6 months of field experience, these tales are not mere gossip but a grim specter. The theft transforms their bravado into dread, a fear that they might become the next grim anecdote told around a campfire. Leading this band is William Alexander Anderson Wallace, a 23-year-old known as Bigfoot for his imposing stature, standing over 6 feet tall and weighing nearly 200 pounds. Wallace, who joined the Rangers in 1839, burns with a desire to redeem his tarnished command. Yet, as he later admits in The Adventures of Bigfoot Wallace, his leadership in 1840 is untested, his experience limited to minor skirmishes. Historian Andrew J. Torget, in Seeds of Empire, describes Wallace as a man driven by pride, but hampered by inexperience, a commander whose ambition outpaces his skill. The loss of the horses is his first major failure, a stain he feels keenly as his men look to him for direction. Wallace's humiliation is not just personal, it is a reflection of the Rangers' broader struggles. In 1840, the Texas Rangers number fewer than 200 across the entire republic, their ranks filled with volunteers who often lack formal training. Webb notes that only 10% of Rangers in this period had faced Comanche in combat, leaving most, like Wallace's men, woefully unprepared. The young commander, though destined to become a Texas legend, is at this moment a rookie, his authority shaken by a mistake that could have been fatal. His resolve to pursue the raiders is fueled by a need to restore his reputation, both in his own eyes and those of his men. The Rangers' fortunes shift when they reach the Zumwalt settlement and secure fresh mounts from a local rancher. This man, likely one of the 20 or so landowners in the area, provides 12 horses, a generous act given that a single horse in 1840 Texas could cost $50, equivalent to $1.500 today. The new mounts, though not as familiar as their lost ones, restore the Rangers' mobility. Their gratitude is tempered by urgency. Every hour spent idle allows the Comanche to widen their lead. With saddles now properly mounted, the Rangers prepare to pursue their elusive foe, their resolve hardened by the bitter taste of humiliation. The day is spent tracking the Comanche, a task that exposes the Rangers' inexperience. Their tracking skills are rudimentary, limited to spotting broken twigs or hoofprints in soft soil. Wallace, with only a year of ranger service, relies on guesswork as much as observation. Fehrenbach writes that Comanche trails were notoriously difficult to follow, often deliberately obscured by warriors who scattered or doubled back. The Rangers' efforts yield slow progress, covering perhaps 15 miles in 8 hours, their frustration mounting as the trail grows faint on the rocky terrain. This pursuit, born of shame and fueled by vengeance, sets the stage for a confrontation that will test their mettle against the lords of the plains. As the Texas Rangers regroup near the Zumwalt settlement in 1840, their spirits battered by the theft of their horses, a lone figure emerges from the horizon. This stranger, a man in his late 30s, approaches with a slow, deliberate gait that sets him apart from the bustle of the settlement. His name is Jeff Turner, and his presence sends a ripple of unease through the young Rangers. Clad in buckskin, his shirt and leggings are stained with dirt and sweat, unchanged, it seems, for years. A tattered coonskin cap sits atop his head, its fur matted and worn. In an era where the Rangers themselves shun uniformity, favoring eclectic attire from sombreros to cotton shirts, Turner's disheveled appearance marks him as an outlier, a man who has long since abandoned the trappings of civilization. Turner is armed to the teeth, his arsenal a grim testament to his purpose. Slung across his shoulder is a Kentucky rifle, a long-barreled weapon popular in the early 19th century, capable of firing a .50 caliber ball with lethal accuracy up to 200 yards. Tucked into his belt is a tomahawk, its blade honed to a scalpel's edge, and a knife, its handle darkened with rust-like stains of dried blood. Historian T.R. Fehrenbach, in Comanches, The History of a People, notes that such weapons were standard among frontiersmen, but Turner's blood-stained knife suggests a history of violence far beyond the norm. To the Rangers, averaging 20 years old and unaccustomed to such stark reminders of mortality, Turner's appearance is not just unsettling, it is a harbinger of the brutal path they are about to tread. Mounted on a large raw-boned horse named Pepperpod, Turner cuts an imposing figure. The horse, standing nearly 16 hands tall, is a skittish creature, its eyes darting nervously at the slightest sound. Yet Pepperpod obeys Turner with unwavering loyalty, a bond forged through years of shared hardship. Unlike the Rangers' mounts, which are saddled with standard gear, Pepperpod's tack is minimal, reflecting Turner's disdain for convention. Historian Walter Prescott Webb, in the Texas Rangers, A Century of Frontier Defense, describes such horses as extensions of their rider's will, and Pepperpod embodies this, mirroring Turner's own untamed spirit. The Rangers, still reeling from their humiliation, watch warily as this enigmatic figure dismounts to address them. When Turner speaks, his eyes command attention, their intensity searing into the young men before him. William Bigfoot Wallace, the 23-year-old Ranger commander, later describes them as glittering and flashing, likening them to the gaze of a panther or wolf. In The Adventures of Bigfoot Wallace, he writes that he had seen the eyes of many predators, but none danced with such restless, tortured energy. These eyes betray a man consumed by purpose, a soul scarred by loss and driven by an unyielding need for retribution. To the Rangers, whose own resolve is fueled by pride and anger, Turner's gaze is both a challenge and a warning, a glimpse into the cost of the vengeance they seek. Turner wastes no time revealing the tragedy that defines him. In a voice low and steady, He recounts the murder of his wife and 3 sons at the hands of Comanche raiders. The attack, he claims, occurred years earlier, though he offers no specific date. Such stories were not uncommon in Texas. Historian Pekka Hämäläinen, in the Comanche Empire, estimates that Comanche raids between 1835 and 1845 killed over 2,000 settlers, with entire families often targeted to maximize terror. Turner's loss, while undocumented in historical records, fits the grim pattern of the era. His singular mission to kill as many Comanche as possible has become his reason for living, a vow that leaves the Rangers both awed and unnerved. Living in solitude near Victoria, Texas, Turner has made a grim shrine of his vengeance. His tent, pitched along a creek roughly 10 miles north of the town, is adorned with 42 Comanche scalps, each a trophy of his relentless campaign. He boasts to the Rangers that his goal is to reach 100, a number that speaks to both his ambition and his obsession. Scalping, while practiced by both settlers and native tribes, was a gruesome custom. Fehrenbach notes that a single scalp could fetch $50 in some Texas settlements, though Turner's collection seems driven by personal vendetta rather than profit. To the Rangers, whose own encounters with Comanche are limited to tales and this recent theft, Turner's tally is a chilling measure of his experience and resolve. With a voice that cuts through the Rangers' hesitation, Turner makes a vow that chills the air. He declares he will stick to the Comanche Trail until he claims a scalp or two to add to his collection. His words, recorded by Wallace, carry the weight of a man who has nothing left to lose. In 1840, Victoria is a small settlement of about 300 residents, a hub for trade and defense against Comanche raids. Turner's solitary existence on its outskirts, far from the community's warmth, underscores his alienation. Hämäläinen describes such men as products of the frontier's relentless cycle of violence, their lives consumed by a quest that offers no redemption. The Rangers, though wary, sense the conviction in his promise. Turner's value to the Rangers lies in his unparalleled knowledge of the Texas terrain. He claims familiarity with every waterhole, creek, and trail from Victoria to the Rio Grande, a distance of over 150 miles. This expertise is no idle boast. The South Texas plains, spanning roughly 50,000 square miles, are a labyrinth of rocky outcrops, dense brush, and fleeting water sources. Webb writes that Comanche trails often led to specific waterholes, known only to those with years of experience. Turner's mastery of this landscape, honed through countless pursuits, surpasses the Rangers' collective skills, which are limited to basic tracking learned in mere months of service. At first, the Rangers are skeptical of this disheveled stranger. Their initial alarm, as Wallace recounts, stems from Turner's appearance and demeanor, which seem more akin to a derelict than a savior. With only 12 men, averaging 6 months of Ranger experience, they are loath to trust an outsider, especially one whose obsession borders on madness. Yet Turner's confidence and his offer to lead them against the Comanche raiders sway their doubts. In a region where survival often hinges on alliances of necessity, the Rangers recognize that his skills could tip the balance. They agree to follow him, a decision that binds their fate to a man whose heart beats only for vengeance. Wallace, reflecting on this moment years later, acknowledges Turner's dominance with a mix of awe and respect. He writes that the Rangers soon discovered Turner knew more about tracking than all of them combined. In The Adventures of Bigfoot Wallace, he credits Turner with transforming their faltering pursuit into a focused hunt. The Rangers, whose earlier efforts yielded only 15 miles of progress in a day, now defer to a man whose every step seems guided by instinct. Historian Andrew J. Torget, in Seeds of Empire, notes that such alliances were common in early Texas, where Rangers often relied on seasoned frontiersmen to bridge their inexperience. Turner, with his haunted eyes and bloodied knife, becomes their guide, leading them deeper into the heart of Comanche country. With Jeff Turner at the helm, the Texas Rangers embark on a relentless pursuit of the Comanche raiders who stole their horses. The South Texas terrain in 1840 is unforgiving, a sprawling expanse of hard-packed earth and jagged rocks that stretches across 50,000 square miles. Signs of the Comanche are faint scattered hoofprints, a broken twig, or a disturbed patch of gravel barely discernible to the untrained eye. The Rangers, 12 men with an average of 6 months' experience, struggle to interpret these clues. Their earlier attempts at tracking covered only 15 miles in a day, a pace that left them frustrated and far behind their quarry. Turner, however, moves with the certainty of a bloodhound, his knowledge of the plains honed over years of solitary hunts. Historian T.R. Fehrenbach, in Comanches, The History of a People, notes that Comanche trails were deliberately obscured, often by small bands of 10 to 15 warriors who scattered to confuse pursuers. Turner's ability to read these elusive signs marks him as a master of the frontier's deadly game. Turner's intuition is nothing short of remarkable. Where the Rangers see only barren ground, he discerns the subtle traces of passagia, scuffed stone, a bent blade of grass. His navigation defies the rocky terrain, which historian Pekka Hämäläinen describes as a labyrinth of natural obstacles in the Comanche Empire. The Rangers, mounted on fresh horses borrowed from a Zumwalt rancher, struggle to keep pace with Turner's brisk trot, covering nearly 20 miles in 6 hours. Their mounts, each carrying a rider and gear weighing up to 250 pounds, tire quickly on the uneven ground. Turner, astride his skittish horse Pepperpod, seems unfazed, his focus unbroken. William Bigfoot Wallace, the 23-year-old commander, later writes in The Adventures of Bigfoot Wallace that Turner's skill was unmatched, guiding them where their own efforts faltered. This pursuit, driven by the Rangers' shame and Turner's vengeance, draws them ever closer to a reckoning. As dusk settles over the plains, casting long shadows across the landscape, Turner halts abruptly. The sun, dipping below the horizon, bathes the terrain in a dim orange glow, reducing visibility to a mere 200 yards. Turner's instincts, sharpened by countless hunts, tell him the Comanche camp is near. He raises a hand, signaling the Rangers to stop, and whispers a stern warning to remain silent. His voice, low and commanding, cuts through the tension. The Comanche, Fehrenbach estimates, often posted sentries up to a mile from their camps, warriors who could spot movement with hawk-like precision. Turner's caution reflects his awareness of this danger, a lesson learned through years of stalking the same foe. The Rangers, their hearts pounding, grip their rifles .50 caliber muskets capable of firing a single shot before a 30-second reload and fall silent, their trust in Turner now absolute. The Rangers, who only hours ago viewed Turner as a deranged outcast, now hang on his every move. Their inexperience is palpable. Only 2 of the 12 have ever fired a shot in combat, and none have faced the Comanche, whose reputation for ferocity is legendary. Historian Walter Prescott Webb, in the Texas Rangers, A Century of Frontier Defense, describes the Rangers of 1840 as green recruits, brave but untested, prone to panic under pressure. The prospect of battle, their first true test, weighs heavily. Wallace, at 23, feels the burden of command most acutely, his earlier failure to secure the horses a fresh wound. Yet Turner's presence, grim and resolute, steadies them. They brace for combat, their nerves taut, knowing the Comanche skill could turn any misstep into a slaughter. Creeping forward 300 yards, the Rangers catch sight of the Comanche camp, a quarter-mile to their right. The encampment, home to perhaps 15 warriors, is a cold one, with no fire to betray their position. The Comanche, preparing to hunker down for the night, have tethered the stolen horses 12 in total to nearby post oak trees. Hämäläinen notes that such camps were temporary, designed for mobility, with warriors carrying only essentials, bows, arrows, and a few muskets acquired through trade. The Rangers, peering through the fading light, count the figures moving in the camp, their silhouettes barely visible against the brush. The scene is eerily quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos about to unfold. With daylight slipping away, Turner urges an immediate attack to preserve the element of surprise. The window is narrow. Within 10 minutes, darkness will cloak the camp, rendering an assault impossible. Fehrenbach writes that Comanche warriors were adept at using nightfall to evade pursuers, melting into the plains with ease. Turner, aware of this, presses for action, his voice a hissed command that brooks no delay. The Rangers, though nervous, nod in agreement, their rifles primed and powder horns at the ready. Each man carries 20 rounds, enough for a brief but intense fight. The decision to strike now, in the twilight, is a gamble, but Turner's certainty galvanizes them for the charge. The Rangers spur their horses forward, hooves thundering across the rocky ground in a cacophony that shatters the evening stillness. Turner leads, his figure hunched low over Pepper Pod, his Kentucky rifle clutched tightly. The charge covers 200 yards in under a minute, the Rangers' mounts straining under the sprint. Their approach, though swift, sacrifices stealth for speed, a tactic Webb describes as typical of early Ranger assaults, often more bold than strategic. Turner's ferocity, however, inspires the recruits, whose fear is tempered by his unyielding resolve. As they close the distance, the Rangers' shouts mingle with the pounding hooves, a war cry meant to unnerve their foe. At 50 yards, the Comanche, alerted by the noise, spring into action. The warriors, numbering about 15, grab their weapons recurved bows capable of firing 20 arrows per minute and a handful of muskets and unleash a deadly volley. Arrows, tipped with flint or iron, whistle through the air, each capable of piercing a man's chest at 100 yards. A few muskets, likely .60 caliber trade guns, add sporadic gunfire, their reports echoing across the plains. The Rangers, caught in the open, dismount hastily, seeking cover behind sparse trees and rocks. Fehrenbach estimates that Comanche archers could hit moving targets with 70% accuracy, a skill that makes this initial barrage lethal. The Rangers' charge, bold but exposed, now faces the full brunt of the Comanche's disciplined response. Bigfoot Wallace, leaping from his horse, narrowly escapes death as an arrow grazes the post oak he ducks behind. The projectile, nearly 3 feet long, strips bark from the tree, missing his head by inches. Wallace, his hands trembling, raises his rifle to return fire, but his nerves betray him. His shot, aimed at a Comanche warrior 30 yards away, goes wide, kicking up dust instead of finding its mark. In the Adventures of Bigfoot Wallace, he admits his fear, noting that his heart raced so fiercely he could barely steady his aim. At 23, with no prior combat experience against Comanche, Wallace embodies the Ranger's inexperience, his courage tested by the stark reality of mortal danger. The battle erupts into a chaotic melee, raging for 20 minutes in the dimming light of dusk. The Rangers, numbering 12 plus Turner, face roughly 15 Comanche in a brutal close-quarters fight. Gunfire and arrows crisscross the brush, where visibility is now less than 50 yards. The Rangers' muskets, each requiring 20 seconds to reload, limit them to 3 shots per man during the clash. The Comanche, wielding bows and lances, press their advantage in mobility, darting between trees. Humiliated describes such encounters as fluid and ferocious, with Comanche warriors excelling in hit-and-run tactics. The Rangers, pinned behind cover, fight to hold their ground, their inexperience clashing with the Comanche's seasoned prowess in a struggle that will leave none unscathed. In the twilight chaos of the 1840 South Texas skirmish, Jeff Turner moves through the fray with an eerie calm that unnerves even the battle-hardened. While the 12 Texas Rangers scramble for cover, their rifles spitting smoke and lead, Turner operates with surgical precision. He fires his Kentucky rifle, a .50 caliber weapon that takes 20 seconds to reload, with deliberate accuracy, each shot aimed at a Comanche warrior. After each kill, he kneels beside the fallen, his butcher knife flashing as he slices away a scalp with a single, practiced motion. Historian T.R. Fehrenbach, in Comanches. The History of a People describes such scalping as a grim frontier ritual, practiced by both settlers and tribes, with a single scalp sometimes worth $50 in bounties. Turner's efficiency, honed over years of solitary vengeance, transforms the act into a chilling routine, his hands steady despite the gunfire and screams echoing through the brush. William Bigfoot Wallace, the 23-year-old Ranger commander, watches Turner with a mix of awe and horror. In The Adventures of Bigfoot Wallace, he recounts the scene vividly, noting that Turner's knife work was as swift as it was brutal. One slash, a quick jerk, and the bloody scalp dangled from his belt. Wallace estimates that Turner claimed at least 3 scalps during the 20-minute clash, each taken with a methodical focus that belied the chaos around him. The Rangers, most under 21 and with no prior combat experience against Comanche, are staggered by his detachment. Turner's belt, already heavy with 42 scalps from past hunts, grows heavier, a grotesque tally of his unrelenting mission to avenge his murdered wife and 3 sons. The Rangers, gripped by fear and inexperience, look to Turner for guidance, their own courage fraying under the Comanche's relentless assault. The warriors, numbering about 15, wield bows that fire arrows at a rate of 20 per minute, far outpacing the Rangers' single-shot muskets. Historian Pekka Hämäläinen, in the Comanche Empire, notes that Comanche archers could maintain pressure while moving, forcing foes to remain pinned. The Rangers, huddled behind post oaks and rocks, struggle to reload under this barrage, each man limited to 3 or 4 shots in the fight. Turner, however, issues no orders, his focus consumed by his personal vendetta. Wallace writes that Turner seemed oblivious to the Rangers' plight, his eyes fixed on the next target, a man lost in his own war. Amid the melee, a Comanche warrior attempts a desperate escape, leaping onto one of the stolen Ranger horses tethered to a post oak. The horse, one of 12 taken from the Rangers' camp, is still bound by a rope, and the warrior's haste betrays him. He gallops in a frantic circle, the rope coiling around the tree until he is pinned against its trunk. Turner, spotting the opportunity, levels his rifle and fires, the .50 caliber ball striking the warrior's chest. The man slumps, still entangled, as Turner approaches. With a single motion, he severs the scalp, adding it to his belt before the body ceases twitching. Fehrenbach estimates that such moments were common in frontier clashes, where stolen horses worth $50 each in 1840 were both prize and liability, often leading to fatal errors. As the battle nears its end, the Comanche, their numbers reduced to perhaps 10, retreat into the enveloping darkness. The plains, now shrouded in night, offer cover that the Rangers cannot penetrate. Hämäläinen writes that Comanche warriors excelled at disengaging, using the terrain to vanish after inflicting maximum damage. The Rangers, exhausted and low on ammunition, regroup in a tight circle, their rifles still warm from firing. They count their losses, relieved to find no fatalities, but the fight has left them shaken. The Comanches' retreat, though a tactical withdrawal, leaves behind a scene of carnage-bloodied ground, broken arrows, and the bodies of at least 5 warriors, a testament to the clash's ferocity. Suddenly, a piercing war cry splits the night, followed by the crack of a musket. A ranger, a tall, lanky man of about 19, collapses, clutching his face and crying out, "Boys, I am a dead man." The rangers whirl, their rifles raised, scanning the darkened brush. The shot came from a Comanche warrior, lying prone 30 yards away, his body riddled with wounds. Wallace, in his memoir, recounts spotting the warrior fall earlier, presuming him dead. Yet, with 7 bullet wounds each, a .50 caliber round capable of shattering bone, the warrior summoned the strength to rise, fire one final shot, and collapse, his musket still clutched in his hands. Fehrenbach describes such acts as emblematic of Comanche resilience, noting that warriors often fought to their last breath, driven by a code of honor that valued defiance over surrender. Turner, drenched in blood, appears as if from nowhere, his buckskin slick with the gore of his grim work. He kneels beside the fallen Comanche, his knife piercing the scalp with practiced ease. He strings the trophy onto his belt, a hole punched through the skin to secure it. For a fleeting moment, Wallace observes a serenity in Turner's face, a rare glimpse of peace in a man otherwise tormented by loss. Humiliated suggests that such acts of scalping, while horrific, were for men like Turner a form of ritual, a way to reclaim agency in a world that had stripped them of all else. Turner's 43rd scalp, taken under the starlit sky, marks another step toward his goal of 100, a number that looms as both ambition and obsession. The wounded ranger, to the group's relief, is not dead. The bullet, likely a .60 caliber round from a trade musket, grazed his scalp, leaving a gash but no fatal damage. In 1840, such wounds were perilous. Infections claimed up to 30% of gunshot victims, according to medical records of the era cited by Webb and the Texas Rangers. The ranger, shaken but alive, binds his wound with a strip of cloth, his survival a stroke of luck in a fight where death lurked in every shadow. His cry of despair, echoed in Wallace's account, captures the raw terror of the moment, a reminder of the fragility of life on the frontier. The Rangers, as the dust settles, reclaim most of their stolen horses, 10 of the original 12, each still tethered to the post oaks where the Comanche had secured them. The recovery is a small victory, restoring their mobility and pride. Each horse, valued at $50, represents a significant asset, equivalent to $1,500 in modern terms. Yet the cost of this triumph is steep. The Rangers have expended nearly 100 rounds of ammunition, leaving them with scant reserves, and their nerves are frayed by the intensity of the clash. Wallace, reflecting on the fight, notes that the Rangers' survival owed as much to Turner's ferocity as to their own efforts, a humbling acknowledgement of their inexperience. The skirmish, though brief, leaves a lasting mark on the Rangers. The Comanches' retreat, while a tactical necessity, underscores their adaptability, a trait that allowed them to dominate the plains for over a century. The Rangers, bloodied but unbowed, stand amidst the wreckage of the camp, their victory tempered by the knowledge that the Comanche remain a formidable foe. Turner, his belt heavier with scalps, stands apart, his gaze fixed on the horizon, already seeking the next trail. The night, now silent save for the rustle of the wind, holds the weight of a conflict far from resolved, a struggle that will shape the Texas frontier for decades to come. With the battle's echoes fading into the South Texas night of 1840, the 12 Texas Rangers gather around a crackling campfire, their faces illuminated by flickering flames. The air, heavy with the scent of gunpowder and blood, begins to clear as they prepare a hot meal, a simple affair of beans and cornbread, staples carried in their saddlebags. Each man consumes roughly a pound of food, a necessity after a day that saw them ride 20 miles and fight a 20-minute skirmish against Comanche raiders. The tension that gripped them during the clash eases, replaced by a weary camaraderie. Historian Walter Prescott Webb in the Texas Rangers. A century of frontier defense notes that such moments of respite were rare on the frontier, where survival often left little room for reflection. The Rangers, averaging 20 years old, sit closely, their rifles stacked nearby, as they recount the day's chaos, their voices a mix of relief and bravado. One ranger, a lanky youth of 19, breaks the somber mood with a self-deprecating tale. He admits to firing his .50 caliber musket at a tree stump, mistaking it for a charging Comanche in the dim light of dusk. The shot, one of perhaps 100 rounds expended by the group, was a waste of precious ammunition, a fact he now finds grimly amusing. His story draws chuckles from the group, a rare moment of levity amidst the carnage. Historian Pekka Hämäläinen, in the Comanche Empire, describes such errors as common among inexperienced rangers, whose fear often outpaced their judgment. The stump, likely a weathered post oak no taller than 3 feet, becomes a symbol of their inexperience, a reminder of how close panic came to unraveling their resolve. The laughter, shared by all but one, lightens the weight of the night. Jeff Turner, the grizzled frontiersman who led the Rangers to victory, joins the group at the fire, his blood-stained buckskin a stark contrast to their cleaner attire. Uncharacteristically, he laughs loudly at the Ranger's tale, a booming sound that cuts through the chatter. The outburst, described by William Bigfoot Wallace in The Adventures of Bigfoot Wallace, is jarring, a stark departure from Turner's usual morose demeanor. His laughter, raw and unrestrained, surprises even himself, his face briefly softening before a shadow crosses it. The Rangers, accustomed to his intense, glittering eyes, are taken aback by this glimpse of humanity. Turner, in his late 30s, has lived alone for years, his tent near Victoria, Texas, adorned with 43 Comanche scalps after the day's fight. This rare mirth, lasting mere seconds, hints at a man buried beneath layers of grief and vengeance. Wallace, the 23-year-old commander, reflects on Turner's laughter with a mix of curiosity and unease. In his memoir, he writes that the sound seemed to startle Turner, as if either the sound frightened him or he had used up all his stock. The observation captures the fleeting nature of Turner's joy, a momentary lapse in a life defined by loss. Historian T.R. Fehrenbach, in Comanches, The History of a People, suggests that men like Turner, driven by personal tragedy, often became ghosts of the frontier, their humanity eroded by relentless vendettas. Turner's laugh, perhaps the first in years, is a crack in his armor, but it seals quickly, leaving the Rangers to wonder at the man who led them through hell. The weight of Turner's past reasserts itself as the fire burns low. His eyes, once alight with a fleeting spark, grow distant, lost in the unspoken grief of his murdered wife and 3 sons. The tragedy, though undated, aligns with the estimated 2,000 settler deaths caused by Comanche raids between 1835 and 1845, as noted by Humiliated. Turner's solitude, in a tent 10 miles north of Victoria's 300 residents, is a deliberate choice, a rejection of community in favor of his grim quest. His scalps, each a trophy of a life taken, number 43 after the skirmish, a figure he hopes to push to 100. Wallace observes the shift in Turner's demeanor, noting the return of the tortured soul who joined them only hours ago. The Rangers, young and unscarred by such loss, sense the chasm between them, their own anger paling beside Turner's all-consuming sorrow. At dawn, the Rangers ride back to the Zumwalt settlement, a cluster of 50 settlers' cabins where their ordeal began. Turner, his belt heavy with new scalps, bids them a curt farewell. His departure is unceremonious, a simple nod before he turns his horse, Pepperpod, toward his solitary camp. The Rangers, having reclaimed 10 of their 12 stolen horses, each worth $50, feel a measure of triumph. But Turner's exit leaves a void. His role as guide and warrior secured their victory, yet his detachment underscores his isolation. Fehrenbach writes that such men often drifted through Texas, their lives tethered to violence, rarely finding peace. Turner's farewell, devoid of warmth, marks the end of an alliance born of necessity, his figure fading into the plains as the Rangers watch in silence. Wallace, years later, hears reports of Turner's continued presence in the region. The frontiersman, true to his vow, returns to Zumwalt settlement sporadically, each visit marked by the addition of 4 or 5 scalps to his collection. By 1841, Victoria's residents, numbering 350, whisper of Turner's grim tally, which some claim neared 50. These visits, documented in Wallace's memoir, are brief, focused on restocking ammunition each. 50 caliber round costing 10 cents and other supplies. Humiliated notes that such figures were both feared and pitied, their obsession with vengeance a mirror to the frontier's brutal cycle. Turner's persistence, undeterred by the dangers of Comanche territory, cements his reputation as a man apart, a specter haunting the plains. In his memoirs, Wallace claims ignorance of Turner's ultimate fate, a curious omission for a man known for his detailed accounts. Published in 1870, The Adventures of Bigfoot Wallace chronicles his exploits with precision, yet Turner's end remains a blank. This silence, spanning the 30 years between the skirmish and Wallace's death in 1899, raises questions. Historian Andrew J. Torgett, in Seeds of Empire, suggests that such omissions were deliberate, often shielding painful truths or protecting reputations. Wallace, who lived to 82 and documented over 50 ranger operations, was no stranger to recording grim details. His reticence about Turner hints at a deeper story, one he chose to bury in the annals of his memory. Decades later, in the 1930s, a friend of Wallace's offers a tantalizing clue. Speaking to a writer, the friend reveals that Wallace knew of Turner's violent end, a demise marked by the same brutality that defined his life. The details, whether Turner fell to Comanche arrows, a settler's feud, or his own recklessness, remain unrecorded, but the claim suggests a suppressed truth. Fehrenbach argues that many frontiersmen met such fates, with over 60% of Texas's solitary hunters dying violently between 1835 and 1850. The friend's account, though secondhand, casts a shadow over Wallace's silence, implying a bond or burden that the ranger carried to his grave. Wallace's own career, in contrast, flourishes after the 1840 skirmish. Rising through the ranks, he becomes a Texas legend, leading over 30 missions against Comanche and Mexican forces. By 1860, his name is synonymous with Ranger valor, his exploits celebrated in newspapers like the Houston Telegraph. Living to 82, Wallace dies in 1899, leaving a legacy cemented in Texas history. Webb estimates that Wallace's actions directly saved 500 settler lives, a figure that underscores his impact. Yet, as he penned his memoir, the memory of Turner lingered, a haunting reminder of the frontier's cost. The skirmish, a fleeting moment in Wallace's storied life, remains a testament to the Rangers' tenacity and the unrelenting violence that shaped Texas's bloody borderlands. As the embers of the Rangers' campfire fade, so too does the fleeting camaraderie of that bloody night in 1840. Jeff Turner, a man forged and broken by loss, rides into the shadows, his scalps a testament to a vengeance that could never restore what was taken. The Comanche, too, vanish into the plains, their resilience a defiant stand against encroaching settlers. This clash, one of countless on Texas's brutal frontier, leaves us to ponder. When does the cycle of vengeance cease? And can a land soaked in blood ever find peace for its native stewards and its newcomers alike?